Hi everyone, it's Lynnea. Welcome back for another video for day 2 of the LDRS Creative February features. I've grabbed a couple more of my favorite February release products and I'm going to make a quick card. So I'm using the Friends Like You stamp set and the coordinating die set, the Pretty Patterns pattern paper, and I'm actually going to be using both the 6x6 and the new 4x9 slimline size, as well as the Pretty Patterns die set. So I went ahead and I did some die cutting off camera. I used that large outer die to cut a white piece of cardstock, and you can see it gives that fun little, either they could be hearts or arrow detail around the outside edge. I used the square die to cut out 2 white frames, and that has a different pattern, but it's definitely a coordinating pattern with the outside slimline frame there. Now I'm going to take this rectangle die, which can be used on its own, or you can pair it with this flap die. So I'm going to pair these 2 dies together. I'm going to use some purple tape to tape these 2 dies together, matching them up, or lining them up I should say, so that they are even together. And then I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine using some pattern paper from that Pastel Patterns 6x6 paper pack. I think I ended up using 5 total patterns on today's card, and so you can really see how well these colors and patterns work well together. Now here's my little rectangle flap all die cut out. Isn't it so cute? You could put a hidden sentiment under here, or I'm going to put a little critter under here. Now I wanted to have some coordinating patterns going behind my square die cut frames. And the easiest way that I have found to do this is to use either double-sided adhesive before you die cut, which is probably easier than the liquid adhesive, or you can use the liquid adhesive, and then I just lay this over a piece of the Pretty Patterns pattern paper, and I use my scissors to trim around the outside and cut away the excess. I found this was a lot easier than trying to cut down pieces that would fit perfectly behind here. But if you wanted to, you see how that center part of the square cuts out? You could use that same die to cut from the pattern paper and then just piece the 2 together, the inner square and the outer square. But I found that this way provided a little bit more stability and it worked better for my creative style. So I'm just using my bone folder to really press that glue onto that pattern paper and make sure it's not going to go anywhere. And then I'll use my scissors and just trim around the outside, and I'll do that twice. You see the pink pattern paper there all the way on the right? I do end up switching that out in a little bit. So now let's work on the rest of my card. I wanted to use a sentiment that wasn't going to fit where I wanted it to be. I thought that I would put my sentiment behind this little lifted flap here, but it wasn't going to work, so that's okay. I'm just going to readjust and kind of fix my design a little bit. I realized that if I'm not going to stamp my sentiment behind that flap, I wanted to have a pattern paper piece behind there. So this is where I'm going to go and just cut that scalloped rectangle. You see that I popped out that inner die, the one that cuts the flap. I'm just going to use the outer edge, just that rectangle die, and I'm going to find a pattern that hasn't been used yet on my card, as well as a color that hasn't been used on my card. So I think I went with the purple stripes, and I'm just going to use that frame and cut that out, and then I can easily glue that blue patterned lifted flap right on top of that purple stripe pattern, and then I'll have a pattern behind my little door. I stamped my sentiment onto a strip of white cardstock using Raven Hybrid ink, and now I'm going to show you how I create my ribbon banner edges. I cut my strip to my desired length, and then I do a cut in the middle, right up the middle, and then I go from one edge to the middle, and I find it easiest to flip over my cardstock and go from the other edge up to the middle. I'll show you that one more time here. Cut right up the middle, and then from one edge to the middle, and flip it over and go from the other edge to the middle, and that gives me a perfect banner edge every time. Instead of having the sentiment go behind my lifted flap, I'm actually going to put this on top of my lifted flap. And here's where you see I switched around my designs a little bit. There's a second die in that Pretty Patterns slimline die set, and so I used a pattern paper from the Pastel Patterns 4x9 pattern paper pack, and I cut that inner die. It just creates a fun little double stitched border. Cut that from the pink and white polka dotted pattern paper, and I will adhere that right into the center of my slimline card front. And then instead of having that pink polka dotted pattern paper for my little square, I switched it out for the green plaid. So I have a total of 5 patterns and 5 colors featured from the Pastel Patterns paper packs. I added some foam tape behind each of my elements on the front, those 2 squares, and my rectangle flap piece. And I'm just going to center them up, going right down the center of my card. Now, if you wanted to, you could adhere the background paper for that center lifted flat piece flat onto the card and pop up just the rectangle frame. But this is the way I like to do it. I like to add my little critter on the inside with foam tape. That kind of forces that window to stay open a little bit so your recipient knows to lift the flap without you having to tell them to do so. So I've added some foam tape to the back of all of my critters, and I'm just going to kind of mess around here and decide where I want them to go. I kept my 2 smaller critters, the raccoon and the owl, on the outer square frames. No particular reason, just I thought it looked better with the design that way. And then I put the little critter pulling the wagon inside of that flap rectangle there. And remember, I did put him up on foam. So the window will close, but it's not going to remain closed. So your recipient is going to know to pop that up and look behind that window. So here's my card featuring a bunch of products from the LDRS Creative February release. All these products are live in the shop right now, and I've listed them below in my video description. So happy shopping. I'll see you later, guys. Bye. Thank you again very much for watching this video. If you liked this video and you'd like to see more from me, please hit that subscribe button that is on the screen now. And here are a few other videos that I thought you might enjoy.